So let's talk about my end of the year TBR. And by that I mean not exactly every single book that I will read before the end of the year, but I mean maybe. These are just the books that are highest priority before the end of the year that I like basically have to read before the end of the year in my heart. This is a self-imposed guideline because it hits both goals that I have of finishing some series up, which I am actually kind of like, I've at least hit last year's mark with that. But I wanted to get a few more finished up, especially if they include books that were on my physical TBR at the beginning of the year, and then trying to get a lot of books off of my physical TBR before the end of the year. Those being books that I started the year with, that I started 2025 with. So I have not made a lot of progress on that. And so instead of going full tilt into that, I'm trying to hit like a couple of things at once. And so these are the books that will do that, I believe. There's also some things in here that I might very well end up DNFing if I don't like it, and then I'll have more room for other things, whatever. But right now I'm pretty behind on my TBR goal. Really, this has been the worst year for that, and I don't know what happened there. I always like kind of slack off on that and read a lot of things from the library and new things and whatever the first half of the year, and then I scramble the second half. I really need to stop doing that. I started the year with 47 books on my physical TBR that I said I was going to finish up, and that I totally can because I've already read 47 books this year, but I've read 21 total and then DNF'd 3. So yeah, only gotten 24 out of 47 read, when typically speaking, I get in like the high 30s mark, which I might still be able to do if I get all of these read. I don't know. We will see. For myself, I've also broken it into things that I think I'm going to read in November versus December, but I'm not sticking to that entirely. So the first book is Fathom Folk by Eliza Chan. So this is kind of contradictory because I'm reading a book off of my physical TBR, but then I'm also starting a new series. So we'll see what happens with this. This apparently is taking place in a world where humans live like in sort of elevated things above this like water nation kind of. So like all of the water creatures, kelpies, mermaids, sirens, water spirits, whatever, are down below, and then humans are like up above, and so there's this like obvious hierarchical system. And this follows our main character, who is a half siren, and she's getting promoted to a like upper level guard position, which could kind of, she's thinking could help her people out of oppression, but then she ends up having to team up with this other person who I think is like a water dragon or something, and they have to sort of decide, like, unrest starts happening, whatever, and so it's one of those stories about like, do you follow the system's rules when it's a bad system, or do you try to like unmake it? Like, what exactly are we doing here? So yeah, it's this like fantasy world with like water creatures and things, and like mythology creatures and whatever, also talking about this political unrest thing. So this could be really cool. We will see. I don't think I've read anything by Eliza Chan. Is this a debut? I'm actually not sure. But yeah, we will see. Then I need to read Heavenly Tyrant by Siren J. Zhao. I have been sitting on this kind of because I hear a lot of people didn't like this, but I did love Iron Widow. So I am going to reread Iron Widow. I'm really torn on if I want to read it on audiobook or if I just want to reread it physically, because I feel like I could fly through it if I just read it physically. I don't know. Kind of just depends on time and stuff. And then read this one. So for those of you that don't know, this... I want to do like a short synopsis, but it's also like some of these synopses sound so ridiculous. But it is a world in which there are giant mechs that fight. Is it like aliens or something? I'm forgetting it what exactly because I've read it so long ago. But they are fueled, like men typically are the ones that are piloting them, but they're kind of like fueled by like women's lives, basically. They like sacrifice women. And in the first book, our main character ends up being like, no, I'm going to sacrifice men. I'm going to do a little turntable. And in addition to that, she also has a polyamorous love triangle with 2 other male pilots. A specific Rim-E with, yeah, some other things kind of thrown in there. But I really liked the first book. It was very like female rage, all of that. But again, a lot of people don't like the second. I don't really know why. I've just heard it's generally not liked that much. So we will see how I feel about this. And we have Masters of Death by Olivia Blake, which is the book that I'm currently reading. I'm kind of flying through this, to be honest. I'm enjoying it. But this is a urban fantasy standalone that involves a number of different magical creatures, essentially. But there is a woman who's a vampire, but not like our kind of vampire. She's like a Thai mythology vampire who is a real estate agent in Chicago. And the house that she's trying to sell is haunted by this ghost. And he won't leave, and they also don't know like why he's attached to the house. And so they try to get the help of this guy who's a medium, but he's not really a medium. He's actually the godson of death, and so he can kind of call death to like do some of this mediumship stuff. And so they get pulled in, but he's also connected to a bunch of other creatures, like a guardian angel, a like reaper. Those 2 are actually in love. There's a demon who's a best friend of Vi's. There's like all of these different creatures and magical things or whatever. And there's more going on to this. Like, that's the setup of how these people get thrown together, but there's a much larger plot involving death that they all get thrown into. So if you are intrigued by this and you've read Olivia Blake before, I recently DNF'd another Olivia Blake book because I think her books can be like very overly bloated. This has that element of so many characters, but I find it very interesting. It's set in Chicago. The characters are very fun. They're all kind of like bisexual disasters. And yeah, they're you have to be okay with Olivia Blake's pretentious characters. I'll just say that. So yeah, I'm liking this so far though. It's interesting, but yeah, we'll see how I end up feeling about this when I finish it. Then we have The Gods Below by Andrea Stewart. This is another one that it's on my TBR, but if I start it, I'm starting a new series. Anyway, I'm trying to make progress on a lot of fronts at once, okay? This I actually don't know a ton about. It's the start of a new epic fantasy series, and it's taking place around like this gods war, and it's two sisters who find themselves on opposite sides of this gods war. So they're having to kind of like go up against the gods in a lot of ways. That's a very standard premise. That's all I really know about it though, and that's all that it kind of says on the tin. So this, I've heard it's good though. I've heard people have liked this. So yeah, this is one that I think I just need to go into because I've historically been tricked by Andrea Stewart's other synopses. Her other series, I forget what it was, but that one was like not very clear about what it was about from the synopsis. So I'm kind of just like, let's just see what this is. So yeah, and I do like gods wars, you know, gods being like real figures in what's going on and they're like manipulating things. Like all of that's very fun for me. So there's a high chance I'll like this. Then we have Perhaps the Stars by Ada Palmer, which is the fourth and final book in the Terra Ignota series. So this is me finishing up some series. These I've all listened to on audio, and they're just like very, very weird. I can't even fully explain it to you, but basically they're like this whole future hundreds of years from now in which we don't have nations anymore. We have like chosen nations based on values, and you don't have biological families. You have Bosches based again on like values and things, and there's no gender, and you're not really supposed to have religion and all this stuff. And so there's all these like political machination-y things that are happening, and we have a very unreliable narrator as the person who's narrating most of this. And the series is mostly just like a series of conversations between political players. Like it's wild. Anyway, it's really hard to explain. They're very weird books, and if you read them, you just have to go in kind of like ready for a bit of a wild ride. This is the fourth and final book, kind of just tying everything up. And I am very intrigued to see how this ties up because I think the accomplishment and the like undertaking of this series is so interesting and different. And even if sometimes I'm not like enamored with it, I like talking about it. This is like a really good book club series. It's very interesting. There's a lot of thematic stuff to chew on. So yeah, I want to finish up this series before the end of the year. Then as far as finishing up series, I have The Relentless Legion by J.S. Dews. Now in my recent reads, I talked about that I'm not sure about finishing this series because I find myself like not that interested because I just read the second book on audio. But there's things about that second book that are interesting. So I think I might try to switch back to reading it physically because I read the first book on physical copy and I liked it a lot. So maybe it's just like an audio thing for me. I don't know. But yeah, this is a epic sci-fi series. And yeah, it's really even hard. It's hard to explain this one too, because originally it's these groups of soldiers that are stationed out at the Divide, which is basically where like the galaxy or universe or whatever is collapsing, and aliens at some point came through the Divide, and so they're supposed to like fight them off. But it's really not even about that. Like they figure out that there's more political things at play in that first book, and so things are going from there. But it's branched off so far from there now. So I don't know. We will see. If I start reading this and I don't like it, it's going to be a DNF. Or if I'm just like not interested, like these books aren't bad. They're just like not necessarily gripping my attention, but we'll see if switching back to physical copy makes it grip my attention more. And then I finish up another series. Next is continuing on with a series, and that is The Liar's Knot by M.A. Carrick. This is the second book in the Rook and Rose series. The first book I read the end of last year and really loved, and it's really a shame that it's taken me this long to get to the second book. Part of me wants to read the first book, but I've also remembered a lot of it, so I think I'll be fine. But this has like so much, like it almost has like a Venetian society and like political stuff, but then it has really cool magic systems and like this like kind of tarot magic system and dreams and like different sort of factions of people. And there's this like vigilante who's like a folk hero that comes into play, and you're following multiple different characters. And the first book has a lot of like mystery and stuff to it. And yeah, this book is just continuing on. The first book mostly follows a main character who is trying to impersonate someone in like a higher family, in like a wealthy family. And then she gets pulled into way more than she'd bargained for, and that's how we get into all this other stuff. So yeah, I'm very intrigued about continuing on with the series. And I wanted to continue it before the end of the year. So hopefully I can read this one and then get to the third and final one, like in early 2026. And lastly, we have The Sins on Their Bones by Laura R. Samotin. And this is a book that I just picked up in a bookstore one day, like right around the holidays last year, and hadn't heard anything about it. And let me just tell you, I don't usually read off the back, but I think the back little synopsis, the little blurb, summarizes this so well and why I want to read this. Set in a Jewish folklore-inspired reimagining of 19th century Eastern Europe, this queer dark fantasy debut pits two estranged husbands and a daring spy master on opposite sides of a civil war. So not only that, you can see how like gothy and stuff it is. So it's two characters and then this man and his like spy master. So it has these two husbands, but they're estranged. And then one of them teams up with his spy master to help take down this estranged husband. But the husband that he's planning to kill, apparently, because of all political things, is not just an ordinary man. He has died and resurrected himself in an immortal, indestructible body and now claims that he is guided by the voice of God himself. So he's like a necromancer. Yeah, so Dmitri is determined not to let Alexei, the necromancer king guy, corrupt his country, but saving his country and its people will mean forfeiting the soul of the husband he can't bring himself to forsake or the spy masters he's come to love. Incredible. Anyway, I think this is gonna be great. All right, so that is it for my like highest priority end of the year TBR. Comment below, let me know if you have a list of things that you for sure need to read before the end of the year. Thank you all for watching and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.